Do you know what it's like to grow up as a humble shepherd, fated to defeat one of the last Rephaim giants at 15 years old, and ultimately ascend to become a king over a nation? I do. I am David, and I invite you on this journey into my ascension. Growing up, I was a shepherd. Also the youngest and smallest of my 8 brothers. Each day I would wake up, tend to the flocks, and defend the flocks. I alone have defeated lions and bears, while my brothers were off at war against Philistia. As the war rages on, my father wanted me to deliver some food to my brothers at the front line. So I set off. As I get closer and closer, I hear screams of war and feel the fear of the soldiers as I see them tremble in their camps. Once I get closer to the front lines, I find my brothers, and instead of thanking me, they yell at me telling me this is no place for a weakling like you. But beyond them, screaming at me, I hear a deep voice shouting and talking down to the King of Kings, Adonai, our God. I push through the lines and see a figure clothed in armor from head to toe, greater than everyone fighting here. I ask, who is that? One soldier says, that is Goliath. He has been taunting us to send out our champion to fight him for 40 days, and also has been talking down to Adonai, our God. Outraged, I say to my brothers, I will fight him. He has disrespected the name of Adonai for too long. King Saul, the ruler of Israel, overhears me and orders me to put on some armor. King Saul dressed me in his own armor. He put a bronze helmet on my head and gave me armor plate to wear. I buckled my sword on his armor and tried to walk, but I wasn't used to such equipment. I said to King Saul, I can't move wearing these things because I'm not used to them, so I took them off. So, with just a slingshot and 5 smooth stones, I start to walk up to Goliath to challenge him. As I walk, I can hear my brothers yelling at me to come back, but I ignore them. I finally get close enough to see his true size and his armor. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore a bronze armor plate weighing 120 pounds. He had bronze armor protecting his legs and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was bigger than him, with an iron spearhead weighted 15 pounds. As I'm standing in front of him, he laughs in my face because of my small stature and says, come here to me, so I can give your flesh to the birds in the air and the wild animals. I remarked back to him, you're coming at me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin. But I'm coming at you in the name of Adonai Tzvaot, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have challenged. Today Adonai will hand you over to me. I will attack you, lop your head off, and give the carcasses of the army of the Philistine to the birds in the air and the animals in the land. Then all the land will know that there is a God in Israel, and everyone assembled here will know that Adonai does not save by sword or spear, for this is Adonai's battle, and he will hand you over to us. Finally he gets up and stands in his fighting position, ready to kill me. He charges at me, but I am small and quick. It's hard for him to keep up. I put a stone in my slingshot, just as he turns around, and I fire the rock with pinpoint accuracy, and it lands right in the middle of his forehead. He drops his spear as he falls to his knees, then on his face. Not a single soul could say a word. As the silence continued, I ran over to Goliath as he's unconscious, unsheathed his own sword from his scabbard, and beheaded him on the spot. I, David, a 15-year-old boy, with Adonai's help, had defeated Goliath. When the Plishtim saw that their hero was dead, they fled. The men of Israel and Judah got up shouting and pursued the Plishtim all the way to Gat and the gates of Ekron. The wounded Plishtim fell down all along the road from Sha'arayim to Gat and Ekron. After chasing the Plishtim, the army of Israel returned and plundered their camp. As I returned from killing Goliath, Avner in great joy took me and brought me to Saul with the head of Goliath in my hand. Now I need you to remember Anver. He is very important later. Anyway, Saul asked me, young man, whose son are you? I answered, I am the son of your servant Yishai the Beit Lachmi. By the time I had finished speaking to Saul, Jonathan, the king's son, found himself inwardly drawn by my character so much that Jonathan loved me as he did himself. That day, King Saul took me into his service and would not let me go home to my father's house anymore. Jonathan made a covenant with me because he loved me as he did himself. Jonathan removed the cloak he was wearing and gave it to me, his armor too, including his sword, bow, and belt. I would go out, and no matter where King Saul sent me, I was successful. King Saul put me in charge of the fighting men. All the people thought it good, and so did his servants. But little did I know these events were just the beginning of good times, but it would be ended soon. My life would become a living hell, running, hiding, and fearing for my life because of the king's jealousy for me. As I and the others were returning from the slaughter of the Pelishti, women from all over the cities came out of all the cities of Israel to meet King Saul, singing and dancing joyfully with tambourines and three-stringed instruments. In their merrymaking, the women sang, "Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands." Not long after would I find out that King Saul had become blind by jealousy and had become very angry with me. But before I tell you the rest of my ascension to king, I first need to tell you how the downfall of the current king started, which is why I would become king in the first place. Years ago, when I was just a baby, Samuel went to King Saul and said, "Adonai sent me to anoint you king over his people, over Israel." Now listen to what Adonai has to say. Here is what he said. "I remember what Amalek did to Israel, how they fought against Israel when they were coming up from Egypt. Now go and attack Amalek and completely destroy everything they have. Don't spare them, but kill men and women, children and babies, cows and sheep, camels and donkeys." Saul obeyed Adonai and summoned the people and reviewed them in Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers with another 10,000 men from Judah. Saul arrived at the city of Amalek and lay in wait in the valley. Saul said to Keni, "Go away, withdraw, leave your homes there with the Amaleki. Otherwise, I might destroy you along with them, even though you were kind to all the people of Israel when they came out of Egypt." So the Keni went away from among the Amaleki. Then Saul attacked Amalek, starting at Havilah and continuing toward Shur, at the border of Egypt. He took Agag, the king of Amalek, alive, but he completely destroyed the people, putting them to the sword. However, Saul and the people spared Agag, along with the best of the sheep and cattle, and even the second best, also the lambs, and everything that was good. They weren't inclined to destroy these things, but everything that was worthless or weak, they completely destroyed. This was the king's greatest mistake he could ever make. Later that day, the word of Adonai came to Samuel and said, "I regret setting up Saul as king, because he has turned back from following me and hasn't obeyed my orders." This made Samuel overwhelmingly sad, so that he cried to Adonai all night. You see, God told Saul very clearly to kill every single beast in person. Saul disobeyed God. After Adonai told Samuel this, he went up, confronted Saul, and killed King Agag himself, right in front of him. After that, Samuel returned to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house in Givat Saul. Never again did Samuel see Saul until the day he died. But Samuel grieved over Saul, and Adonai regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. About a month later, after my victory over Goliath, I was in the king's household, playing with my harp for the king. As on other occasions, suddenly an evil spirit from God came powerfully over King Saul. He started to twitch uncontrollably so much that he fell into a frenzy in the house. He picked up 2 spears nearby and he threw them both at me. But both times I dodged, because Adonai was with me and had left Saul. Because of his actions, King Saul felt remorse and created distance between us and made me commander over 1,000. But when the king saw how very successful I was, he also became afraid of me, because all of Israel and Judah loved me and knew about all my campaigns. Many days passed. Then one day, out of nowhere, King Saul said to me, "Here is my older daughter Merav. I will give her to you as your wife, only if you continue displaying your courage for me and fight Adonai's battles." With hesitation, I said, "Who am I that I should become the king's son-in-law? I don't have any kind of a life, and my father's family has no rank in Israel." However, when it was time for Merav, Saul's daughter, to be given to me, she was given to a different man. But without knowing it, Michal, King Saul's daughter, fell in love with me. His servants told King Saul that she loved me, and it pleased him. King Saul said, "I'll give her to him, so that she can entrap him, and the Pelishtim can do away with him." So Saul came to me and said, "Today, you will become my son-in-law through the second daughter." I didn't know how to feel. I was shocked, to say the least, and I left without giving him an answer. Later, some of King Saul's servants found me and said, "Look, the king is pleased with you, and all his servants like you, so become the king's son-in-law." Skeptically, I replied, "Do you think being the king's son-in-law is something to be treated so casually, given that I'm a poor man without social standing?" King Saul's servants reported back to him how I had responded. King Saul said, "Here's what you are to say to David. The king doesn't want any dowry. He wants 100 foreskins of the Pelishtim, so that he can have vengeance on the king's enemies." So when his servants said these words to me, it pleased me to become the king's son-in-law. But before the time for me to be married, I had a job to do. I got up and set out, me and his men. and we killed 200 men of the Pelishtim. We brought their foreskins and gave all of them to the king. As I gave him all the skins, I could see the terror in his face. Because I succeeded in what the king said, actions were set for me to become the king's son-in-law. Days later, King Saul gave me Michal, his daughter, as a wife. From that point on, I knew for certain King Saul saw and understood that Adonai was with me, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved me not for my power, but for me. This only made King Saul the more afraid of me, so much that Saul became my enemy for the rest of my life. After a long period of prosperity and peace, the leaders of the Pelishtim would attack, but whenever they attacked, I was more successful than any of Saul's servants, so much so that I acquired a great reputation in the land of Israel. After many successful battles, Jonathan ran to me in confusion and terror. He said, "My father Saul is out to have you killed. Therefore you must be very cautious tomorrow morning. Find a well-concealed place to hide in. I will go out and stand next to my father in the countryside where you're hiding. I will talk with my father about you, and if I learn anything, I'll tell you." Later that day, I know Jonathan spoke well of me to Saul, his father, and said to him, "The king shouldn't sin against his servant David, because he hasn't sinned against you. On the contrary, his work for you has been very good indeed. He put his life in his hands to attack the Pelishtim, and Adonai accomplished a great victory for all Israel. You saw it, and you were happy about it. So why do you want to sin against innocent blood by killing David without any reason?" Thankfully, Saul heeded Jonathan's advice and swore, "As Adonai lives, he will not be put to death." Thereafter Jonathan called me and told me all these things. Then Jonathan brought me to Saul to be in attendance for the king, as before. After another victory, I sat in Saul's house, and again an evil spirit from Adonai came upon Saul while I was playing the harp. Saul tried to pin me with it, but I dodged it so that the spear hit the wall. Afraid for my life with a lesson learned, I fled, and that night I escaped. I ran home to see my wife. She told me, "If you don't save your life tonight, tomorrow you'll be dead." So she helped me escape through the window, and I fled the city. If it wasn't for her, I would have died that night. In fear, I ran to see Samuel in Ramah and told him everything. He took me, and we stayed at the prophet's dormitory. Somehow my whereabouts reached Saul, and he sent soldiers to capture me. But when they weighed the group of prophets prophesying, with Samuel standing and leading them, the Spirit of God fell upon Saul's soldiers, and they too began prophesying. This happened 3 times. Then Saul himself came to find me, but the Spirit of God also came upon Saul, and he stripped off all his clothes and prophesied in Samuel's presence, and lay there naked all that day and all that night. While that was happening, I fled from the prophet's dormitory in Ramah, returned to Jonathan in horror, and said, "What have I done? Where have I gone wrong? What sin have I committed that makes your father want to take my life?" Jonathan replied hastily, "Heaven forbid, you're not going to die. Look, my father does nothing important or unimportant without telling me first, so why should my father hide this from me? It just won't happen." In response, I swore, "Your father knows very well that you have made me your friend. This is why he will say, 'Jonathan must not know this, or he will be unhappy.' As truly as Adonai lives, and as truly as you are alive, there is only a step between me and death." Jonathan said to me, "Anything you want me to do for you, I'll do." I answered Jonathan with a plan and said, "Look, tomorrow is Rosh Hodesh, and I ought to be dining with the king. Instead, let me go and hide myself in the countryside until evening of the 3rd day. If your father misses me at all, say, 'David begged me to let him hurry to Beit Lechem, his city, because it's the annual sacrifice there for his whole family.' If he says, 'Very good,' then your servant will be all right. But if he gets angry, you will know that he has planned something bad. Therefore, show kindness to your servant, for you bound your servant to yourself by a covenant before Adonai. But if I have done something wrong, kill me yourself. Why turn me over to your father?" Jonathan said, "Heaven forbid. If I ever were to learn that my father had definitely decided to do you harm, wouldn't I tell you?" Then I asked Jonathan, "Who will tell me in the event your father gives you a harsh answer?" He said to me, "Come, let's go out in the countryside." As we went out to the countryside, Jonathan said to me, "Adonai, the God of Israel, is witness. After I have sounded out my father, about this time tomorrow, or the 3rd day, then if things look good, I will send and let you know. But if my father intends to do you harm, may Adonai do as much and more to me if I don't let you know and send you away, so that you can go in peace. And may Adonai be with you, just as he used to be with my father. However, you are to show me Adonai's kindness, not only while I am alive, so that I do not die, but also, after Adonai has eliminated every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. You are to continue showing kindness to my family forever. Thus Jonathan made a covenant with my family, adding, "May Adonai seek its fulfillment even through David's enemies." Jonathan had me swear it again, because of the love he had for me. He loved me as he loved himself. Jonathan said to me, "Tomorrow is Rosh Hodesh, and you will be missed, because your seat will be empty. The third day, hide yourself well in the same place as you did before. Stay by the departure stone. I will shoot 3 arrows to one side, as if I were shooting at a target. Then I will send my boy to recover them. If I tell the boy, 'They're here on this side of you, take them,' then come. It means that everything is peaceful for you. As Adonai lives, there's nothing wrong. But if I tell the boy, 'The arrows are out there, beyond you,' then get going, because Adonai is sending you away. As for the matter we discussed earlier, Adonai is between you and me forever." I did exactly what he said. I hid in the countryside. The day after Rosh Hodesh, Jonathan went out into the country at the time he had arranged with me, taking with him a young boy. He told the boy, "Now run and find the arrows I'm about to shoot." As the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy reached the place where the arrow was that Jonathan had shot, Jonathan shouted at the boy, "Isn't the arrow beyond you?" Jonathan continued shouting after the boy, "Quick, hurry, don't just stand there." Jonathan's boy gathered the arrows and returned to his master. I felt bad for the boy because he didn't understand anything about the matter. Only Jonathan and I understood. Jonathan gave his weapons to his boy and said to him, "Go, carry them to the city." As soon as the boy had gone, I got up from a place south of the stone, fell face down on the ground, and prostrated myself 3 times, and we wept with each other until it became too much for me. Jonathan said to me, "Go in peace, because we have sworn, both of us in the name of Adonai, that Adonai will be between me and you, and between my descendants and yours, forever." After we said farewell, I got up and left, and Jonathan went back to the city. I went to see Achimelech the Cohen in Nove. Achimelech came trembling to meet me and asked, "Why are you alone? Why is no one with you?" I said to Achimelech the Cohen, "The king has sent me on a mission and told me not to let anyone know its purpose or what I've been ordered to do. I've arranged a place where the guards are to meet me. Now, what do you have on hand? If you can spare 5 loaves of bread, give them to me, or whatever there is." I hadn't eaten in a very long time. The Cohen answered me, "I don't have any regular bread. However, there is consecrated bread, but only if the guards have abstained from women." I answered the Cohen, "Of course women have been kept away from us, as on previous campaigns. Whenever I go out on campaign, the men's gear is clean, even if it's an ordinary trip. How much more then today, when they will be putting something consecrated in their packs?" So the Cohen gave me consecrated bread, because there was no bread there other than the showbread that had been removed from before Adonai, to be replaced by freshly baked bread on the day the old bread was removed. One of the servants of Saul happened to be there that day, detained before Adonai. His name was Doeg the Edomi, the head of Saul's shepherds. I found him and said to Achimelech, "Perhaps you have here with you a spear or a sword?" "I brought neither my sword nor my other weapons, because the king's mission was urgent," he replied nervously. "The sword of Goliath the Pelishti you killed in the Elah Valley is over there behind the ritual vest, wrapped in a cloth. If you want it, take it. It's the only one here." With a smirk I said, "There's nothing else like it. Give it to me." The same day, I took off from and went to Achish, king of Gath. The servants of Achish in confusion said to me, "Aren't you king of the land?" Weren't they dancing and singing to each other? Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. These remarks were not lost on me, and I had become very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. So, as they were watching, I changed my behavior to fool them and acted like a madman when they had hold of me. I put scratch marks on the doors of the city gate with drool running down my beard. Achish said to his servants, "Here, you see that the man is Meshuggah. Why bring him to me? Am I short of Meshuggahim? Is that why you've brought this one to go crazy on me? Must I have this one in my house?" After I left, I took refuge in the cave of Adullam. Wonderfully, my brothers and the rest of my father's family heard where I was, and they came down to see me. It felt amazing to see everyone again, but unfortunately, time was of the essence, and we needed to move. But as we turned to leave, I heard hundreds of footsteps approaching. I saw that 400 men had entered the cave. Fearing that Saul had found me, I told my family to hide. But the men told me that word got out where I was, and all of them were people in distress, in debt, or embittered. They began gathering around me, and I became their leader. There were about 400 with me. I went from there to King Mitzpeh of Moab and said to the king, "Please let my father and mother come and stay with you until I know what God will do for me." I presented them to the king, and they lived with me as long as I remained in his stronghold. But one prophet whose name was Gad said to me, "Don't stay in the stronghold, leave, and go to the land of Judah." So my men and I left, and went to the forest of Heret. One day when we were hiding, one of the sons of Achimelech, named Aviatar, escaped and fled to join me. In a panic, he told me that Saul had killed several Kohanim of Adonai. I yelled to Aviatar. I knew it. That day, when Doeg the Edomi was there, I knew he would tell Saul, "I caused the death of every person in your father's family." I said, "Stay with me. Don't be afraid, because the one who is seeking my life seeks yours too. You'll be safe with me." I was also told, "The Pelishtim are fighting Keilah and plundering the threshing floors." I then quickly consulted Adonai, asking, "Should I go and attack these Pelishtim?" Adonai answered me, "Go and attack the Pelishtim and save Keilah." My men said to me, "Look, we're already afraid here in Judah. How much more then, if we go to Keilah to fight the armies of the Pelishtim?" I consulted Adonai again, and Adonai answered me, "Set out and go down to Keilah, because I will hand the Pelishtim over to you." My men and I went to Keilah and fought the Pelishtim. In one grand swoop, we defeated them in a great slaughter and led away their livestock. Thus we saved the inhabitants of Keilah. When Aviatar, the son of Achimelech, fled to me in Keilah, he had also brought a ritual vest with him. Now Saul, on being informed that David had gone to Keilah, had said, "God has put him into my hands. He's trapped himself by entering a town with gates and bars." So Saul summoned all the people to war, to go down to Keilah and besiege myself and my men. Now I felt that Saul was plotting something against me, so I told Aviatar the Kohen, "Bring the ritual vest here." Then I said, "Adonai, God of Israel, your servant has certainly heard that Saul intends to come to Keilah and destroy the city just to get me. Will the men of Keilah turn me over to him? Will Saul come down, as your servant has heard?" I screamed in fear, "Adonai, God of Israel, please tell your servant." Adonai said, "He will come down." Then I asked, "Will the men of Keilah hand me and my men over to Saul?" Adonai said, "They will hand you over." So my men and I, now around 600, got up in a hurry. We left Keilah and went wherever we could. It was told to Saul that I had escaped from Keilah, so I called off the expedition. I stayed in the desert strongholds, remaining in the hills of the Ziph desert. Saul kept trying to find me, but Adonai was good to me and did not hand me over to him. About a week later, I saw that Saul had mounted another expedition to seek my life. It was when I, at Horesh in the Ziph desert, Jonathan, Saul's son, set out and came to me at Horesh to encourage me in God. He said to me, "Don't be afraid, because my father's forces will not find you. You will be king over Israel, and I will be second to you." Saul, my father, knows this too. Then the two of us made a covenant in the presence of Adonai, after which I stayed at Horesh, and Jonathan returned home. Weeks went by, and again I was told that Saul knew where I was again. So I went down to the rock and stayed in the Maon desert. When Saul heard that, he pursued me with great haste in the Maon desert. Saul went along one side of the mountain, while my men and I went along the other. I was hurrying to get away from Saul, while Saul and his men were trying to surround me and his men in order to capture us. But suddenly they stopped chasing us. Later I found out it was because the Pelishtim are invading the country. Therefore we called that place Selah Hamaklakot, Rock of Divisions. From there I went up and lived in the stronghold of Ein Gedi. That's when things went from bad to worse, you see. Saul needed to take a break from marching, so he went into a cave to rest. He didn't know it, but it was the same cave my men and I were hiding in. I found this out too when one of my men said, "Look, the day has come that Adonai told you about when he said to you, 'I will turn your enemy over to you, and you will do to him whatever seems good to you.'" Quickly, I took a sword and cut off the corner of Saul's cloak. But after doing this, I felt major remorse over cutting Saul's garment. I said to his men, "Adonai forbid that I should do such a thing to my Lord, Adonai's anointed, as raise my hand against him. After all, he is Adonai's anointed." By saying this, I stopped my men and would not let them do anything to Saul. Saul got up, left the cave, and went on his way. Then I too got up and ran outside the cave, where I called after Saul, "My lord the king." When Saul looked behind him, I bowed with my face to the ground and prostrated myself. I said to Saul, "Why do you listen to people who say, 'I am out to harm you'? Today you have seen with your own eyes that Adonai put you in my power there in the cave. Some of my men said I should kill you, but I spared you. I said to my men, 'I won't raise my hand against my Lord, because he is Adonai's anointed. Moreover, my father, look, Here in my hand, you see the corner of your cloak. By the fact that I only cut off a piece of your cloak and didn't kill you, you can see and understand that I have no plan to do harm or rebel, and that I haven't sinned against you, even though you are seeking every chance you get to take my life. May Adonai judge between you and me, and may Adonai avenge me on you. But I will not lay a hand on you. As the old saying has it, out of the wicked comes wickedness. But I will not lay a hand on you. The king of Israel has come on a campaign. After whom? Whom are you chasing? A dead dog, a single flea. Adonai be the judge. Let him decide between you and me. May he take my side and rescue me from your power. After I had finished speaking to Saul, he said, "Is that your voice, my son David?" Then Saul cried out and wept, and he said to me, "You are more righteous than I, because you have treated me well, while I have been treating you badly. You have made it clear to me today that you have done me good. For when Adonai put my fate in your hands, you didn't kill me. A man finds his enemy and lets him go unharmed. May Adonai reward you well for what you did to me today. Now I'm certain that you will indeed become king, and that the kingship of Israel will be established in your hands. So swear to me by Adonai that you will not kill my descendants after I die, or blot out my name from my father's family." After I swore to Saul, he went home, and my men and I went back up to the stronghold. After the death of Samuel, all of Israel, including myself, mourned him, and the people in Israel buried him in Ramah. Following the mourning period, I traveled to the Paran desert. In Maon, a rich man named Naval, who owned thousands of livestock in Carmel, was shearing his sheep. Naval was known to be harsh and mean, contrasting with his intelligent and attractive wife, Abigail. When I heard of Naval's shearing activities, I sent 10 young men to greet Naval warmly and request provisions, telling him about peaceful past interactions between my men and Naval's shepherds. However, Naval dismissively questioned my legitimacy and refused the request, prompting me to prepare for retaliation. As my men and I approached, we encountered Abigail, his wife, who quickly intervened, taking the blame and pleading for forgiveness. She offered provisions to me, urging me not to pursue bloodshed. I was very impressed by her intervention. I accepted her offerings and commended her wisdom, sparing Naval due to her actions. Later, when Abigail informed a sober Naval of the events, he had a stroke and died shortly after. I then praised God for the outcome and sent for Abigail to propose marriage, which she promptly accepted. I also married Achinoam of Yisrael. Unfortunately, I also learned that my previous wife, Michal, whom I loved very much, had been given to another man by Saul. I got word that Saul had found me again, and he was near, not knowing his intentions. I dispatched spies and determined that Saul had come to kill me. I set out and went to where Saul had pitched his camp. I saw where Saul and Avner, the son of Ner, the commander of his army, were sleeping. Saul was lying inside the barricade with the troops asleep all around him. I said to Achimelech and Abishai, "Who will go down with me to Saul in the camp?" Abishai said, "I will go down with you." So Abishai and I went to the soldiers by night. Saul was lying there asleep inside the barricade. His spear was stuck in the ground next to his head, with Avner and the troops asleep all around him. Abishai said to me, "God has handed your enemy over to you today, so now please, let me pin him to the ground with just one stroke of the spear. I won't strike him a second time." But I said to Abishai, "Don't destroy him. Nobody can raise his hand against Adonai's anointed without becoming guilty." I then added, "As Adonai lives, Adonai will strike him down, or the day will come for him to die, or he will go down to battle and be swept away. Adonai forbid that I should raise my hand against Adonai's anointed. But now, we'll take the spear by his head and the jug of water and get out of here." So I took the spear and the water jug from Saul's head and got away. Nobody saw or knew about it, and no one awoke, because they were all asleep. A deep sleep from Adonai had fallen over them. The next day I crossed to the other side and climbed to the top of the distant ridge, leaving a considerable space between me and Saul's camp. Then I yelled out to the troops and to Avner, "Avner, aren't you going to answer?" Avner answered, "Who are you?" calling to the king. Mocking him, I said, "Aren't you the brave one? Who is there in Israel to compare with you? So why haven't you kept watch over your lord, the king? Someone came in to kill the king, your lord. It's not good what you've done. As Adonai lives, you deserve to die, because you didn't keep watch over your lord, Adonai's anointed. And now, see where the king's spear is, and the jug of water that was next to his head." Saul must have recognized my voice, because I heard him say, "Is that your voice, my son David?" I said in amusement, "It is my voice, my lord king. Why is my lord chasing his servant? What have I done? What evil am I planning? Please now, may my lord the king hear what his servant is saying. If it is Adonai who has stirred you up against me, let him receive an offering. But if it's human beings, then a curse on them before Adonai. because as things stand today, they have driven me out, so that I can no longer share in Adonai's inheritance. They've said, 'Go, serve other gods.' Now don't let my blood fall on the ground away from the presence of Adonai. The king of Israel has gone out in search of a single flea, as if he were hunting partridge in the mountains." Then Saul said, "I have sinned. Come back, my son David. I won't harm you any longer, because you regarded my life as precious today. Yes, I have behaved like a fool. I was altogether in the wrong." I answered, "Here's the king's spear. Send one of the men over to bring it back. Adonai will give every person a reward suited to his uprightness and faithfulness. Adonai put you in my power today, but I would not raise my hand against Adonai's anointed. Look, just as I put great value on your life today, so may my life be given great value by Adonai. May he deliver me from every kind of trouble." Saul answered me, "Blessings on you, my son David. No question that you will accomplish everything you set out to do." So I went on my way, and Saul returned to his place. But I said to myself, one day Saul will sweep me away. The best thing for me to do is to escape into the territory of the Pelishtim. Then Saul will give up trying to find me here or there in Israel's territory, and at last I'll be free of him. So I set out with my 600 men and passed on to Achish, the son of Maok, king of Gat. I lived with Achish, my men, each man with his household, including myself and my 2 wives, Achinoam from Yisrael and Abigail from Carmel, Nabal's widow. Thankfully, I was right. Saul set out on an expedition for me again, but stopped searching for me when he found out where I was. I said to Achish, "If you are now favorably disposed toward me, let me have a place to live in one of the cities in the countryside. Why should your servant live in the royal city with you?" That very day, Achish gave him Ziklag, and that's why to this day, Ziklag belongs to the kings of Judah. After I had been living in the country of the Pelishtim for a year and 4 months, my men and I began going up and raiding the Geshuri, the Gizri, and the Amaleki. From ancient times, these people had lived in the land in the direction of Shur, all the way to Egypt. We would attack the land, leaving alive neither men nor women, but taking the sheep, cattle, donkeys, camels, and clothing. Then we would return and go to Achish. Achish would ask, "Where were you raiding today?" And I would answer, "Against the Negev of Judah, against the Negev of the Yerachmeeli, or against the Negev of the Keni." The reason I spared neither men nor women to be brought to Gat is that he thought, we don't want them telling on us, saying, "David did so-and-so." That's how I conducted my raids for as long as I lived in the country of the Pelishtim. And Achish believed me. He said, "David has caused his own people Israel to despise him utterly. He will be my servant forever." In due time, the Pelishtim assembled their armies for war against Israel. Achish told me, "You know, of course, that you and your men will join me and the army in battle." I answered eagerly to Achish, "I see that you already know what your servant will do." Achish said to me, "For that answer, I am making you my personal bodyguard for life." Now that Samuel was dead, all Israel had mourned him and buried him in his city, Ramah. Also, Saul was about to do something that would change his life forever. Again, the Pelishtim assembled. Then they went and pitched camp at Shunem, while Saul gathered all Israel together and pitched camp at Gilboa. When Saul saw the army of the Pelishtim, he became afraid. It struck terror in his heart. But when he consulted Adonai, Adonai didn't answer him, not by dreams, not by Urim, and not by prophets. Nothing. Fearfully, Saul said to his servants, "Try to find a woman who tells the future by communicating with the dead. I want to go and consult with her." Hours later, his servants answered him, "Yes, there's a woman in Eindor who tells the future by communicating with the dead." So Saul disguised himself by wearing different clothing, went with 2 men, came to the woman by night and said, "Tell me the future, please. Bring up from the dead the person I name to you." The woman answered, "Here, you know what Saul did, how he expelled from the land those who tell the future by communicating with the dead or with a demonic spirit. Why are you trying to entrap me into causing my own death?" But Saul swore to her by Adonai, "As Adonai lives, you will not be punished for doing this." Then the woman asked, "Whom should I bring up for you?" He said, "Bring up for me Samuel." When the woman saw Samuel, she let out a shriek. Then the woman said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You yourself are Saul." The king replied, "Don't be afraid, just tell me what you see." The woman said to Saul, "I see a godlike being coming up out of the earth." He asked her, "What does he look like?" She said, "An old man is coming up. He's wearing a cloak." Saul realized it was Samuel, so he bowed with his face to the ground and prostrated himself. Samuel asked Saul, "Why have you disturbed me and brought me up?" Saul answered, "I'm very upset because the Pelishtim are making war against me, and Adonai has left me and doesn't answer me anymore, neither by prophets nor by dreams. This is why I've called you, so that you can let me know what to do." Samuel said, "Why ask me if Adonai has left you and become your enemy?" Adonai has done for himself what he foretold through me. Adonai has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to your fellow countryman David, because you didn't obey what Adonai said and execute his furious anger toward Amalek. That's why Adonai is doing this to you today. Adonai is giving Israel as well as yourself over into the power of the Plishtim, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. Adonai will hand over Israel's army to the power of the Plishtim. Saul immediately fell full length on the ground and became terribly frightened because of what Samuel had said. He had no strength left in him, for he had eaten nothing all that day and night. The woman approached Saul, saw that he was panic-stricken, and said to him, "Here, your servant listened to what you said. I put my life in my hands and did what you requested me to do. Now therefore, please, you listen to what your servant says. Let me put a little food in front of you, then eat, so you will have some strength when you go on your way." But he refused and said, "I won't eat." Then his servants, together with the woman, urged him, and he heeded what they said. He got up off the ground and sat on the bed. The woman had a fattened calf in the house. She hurried to slaughter it. Then she took flour, kneaded it, and baked matzah with it. She served it to Saul and his servants, and they ate. Afterwards, they got up, and they went away that night. While King Saul was consulting the witch, Plishtim gathered all their army together at Aphek, while Israel's army pitched camp by the spring in Yisrael. The leaders of the Plishtim were passing by with their hundreds and thousands. My men and I were bringing up the rear with Achish. The chiefs of the Plishtim asked, "What are these Hebrews doing here?" Achish answered the chiefs of the Plishtim, "This is David, who was a servant of Saul, king of Israel. He's been with me now for well over a year, and I haven't found anything wrong with him between the time he deserted to me and now." But the chiefs of the Plishtim became angry and said to him, "Have the man return and go back to the place you set aside for him. Don't let him go into battle with us, because on the battlefield he might become our enemy. What better way could there be for him to get reconciled with his Lord than by cutting off the heads of our men? This is David. They used to dance and sing about him. Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands." So Achish summoned me and said, "As Adonai lives, you have been upright, and I myself would be more than pleased to have you go on campaign with me, because I haven't found anything wrong with you between the day you arrived and now. However, the chiefs don't trust you. Therefore now, go on back and go in peace, so as not to do what appears bad to the chiefs of the Plishtim." Confused, I replied to Achish, "But what have I done? What have you found in your servant during the time I've been with you that disqualifies me from going and fighting against the enemies of my lord the king?" Achish answered me, "I know that you are as good, from my point of view, as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the chiefs of the Plishtim have said, 'He is not to go up with us to the battlefield.' So get up early in the morning with the servants of your lord who came with you, and as soon as you are up and it gets light, leave." The next day my men and I got up early to leave and go back into the land of the Plishtim, while the Plishtim continued up to Yisrael. 3 days later, when my men and I arrived back home in Ziklag, we found that the Amaleki had raided the Negev and Ziklag. They had sacked them and burned them down, and they had taken captive the women and everyone there, great and small. They hadn't killed anyone but had carried them off as they went on their way. So when my men and I arrived at the city, there it was, burned down, with their wives, sons, and daughters taken captive. Then I and the people with me cried aloud, until we had no more power to cry. My 2 wives had been taken captive, Achinoam and Abigail. I was in serious trouble. The people were talking about stoning me to death, because all the people were in such deep grief, each man over his sons and daughters. But I strengthened myself in Adonai my God. I said to Aviatar the Cohen, the son of Achimelech, "Please bring the ritual vest here to me." Aviatar did so, and brought the vest to me. Then I consulted Adonai. Holding back tears, I asked, "Should I go in pursuit of these raiders? Will I catch up with them?" And Adonai answered me, "Go in pursuit, because you will overtake them and recover everyone and everything." With wrathfulness I went, with 600 men with me. We came to Vadi Bezor, where 200 men who were tired to cross Vadi Bezor stayed behind and waited. The rest of us continued in pursuit with 400 men. Some of my men found an Egyptian in the countryside and brought him to me. They gave him some bread to eat and water to drink. They also gave him a lump of dried figs and 2 bunches of raisins. After eating, he revived, because he hadn't eaten anything or drunk any water for 3 days and nights. I asked him, "To whom do you belong, and where are you from?" He answered, "I'm an Egyptian boy, the slave of an Amaleki. My master abandoned me 3 days ago because I got sick. We raided the Negev of the Karedi, the Negev of Judah, and the Negev of Kalev, and we burned down Ziklag." I asked him, "Will you lead me down to this raiding party?" He said, "If you will swear by God to me that you won't kill me or hand me back to my master, I will lead you down to the raiders." I promised, and he led us down, and there they were, spread out all over the ground. eating, drinking, and celebrating how much spoil they had taken from the territory of the Pelishtim and the territory of Judah. Blinded by rage, we attacked them from dawn until the evening of the next day. Out of thousands of men, only 400 young men who jumped on camels and got away. We recovered all that the Amaleki had taken. We also rescued my 2 wives. We found nothing missing, big or little, not sons, not daughters, not plundered goods, or anything else they had taken, just like Adonai said, and we brought it all back. We took all the flocks and herds and drove them ahead of their own livestock, announcing, "This is David's spoil." We came to where the 200 men were who had been too exhausted to follow him, whom they had let stay at Wadi Besor. They came out to meet me and the people with me. When I approached them, I greeted them, but some of the men who had gone with me were evil men, scoundrels, and they said, "They didn't go with us, so we're not giving them any of the property we've recovered. Each man can take his wife and children and leave." Then I said, "No, my brothers, don't do this with the goods Adonai has given us. He protected us, and he handed the raiding party over to us. Anyhow, no one agrees with you about this. No, the share of someone who stays with the equipment will be the same as the share of someone who goes out and fights. They will share equally. It has been that way from that day on. I established it as a ruling for Israel to this day. When I came to Ziklag, I sent some of the spoil to the leaders of Judah, who were my friends, with a note. Here is a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of Adonai. I sent such gifts to those in Bethel, to those in Ramoth, to those in Yatir, to those in Aroer, to those in Sifmot, to those in Eshtemoa, to those in Rakal, to those in Yerachmeeli, to those in the cities of the Keni, to those in Hormah, to those in Kor Ashan, to those in Atach, to those in Hebron, and to all the places where my men and I had frequently visited. Meanwhile, the Pelishtim pressed their attack on Israel. The men of Israel fled before the Pelishtim, leaving their dead on Mount Gilboa. The Pelishtim pursued and overtook Saul and his sons, and tragically the Pelishtim killed Jonathan, Avinadav, and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. The fighting went hard against Saul. Then the archers overtook and wounded him, so that he was in agony. Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through with it. Otherwise these uncircumcised men will come, run me through and make sport of me." But his armor-bearer refused. He was too frightened. So Saul took his sword and fell on it. When his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his own sword and died with him. Thus Saul, his 3 sons, his armor-bearer, and all his men died that same day together. When the men of Israel who were on the other side of the valley and those who were on the far side of the Yarden saw that the men of Israel had fled and that Saul and his sons were dead, fear-stricken they abandoned the cities and fled. Then the Pelishtim came and lived in them. The following day, when the Pelishtim came to strip the dead, they found Saul and his 3 sons lying dead on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head, stripped off his armor, and sent these all over the territory of the Pelishtim to carry the news to the temples of their idols and to the people. Then they put his armor in the temple for the Ashtaroth and fastened his body to the wall of Beit-Shan. When the people living in Yavesh-Gilad heard what the Pelishtim had done to Saul, all their warriors set out, traveling all night. They took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons off the wall of Beit-Shan, returned to Yavesh, and burned them there. Then they took their bones, buried them under the tamarisk tree in Yavesh, and fasted 7 days. Saul had died, and I was 2 days in Ziklag after returning from the slaughter of the Amaleki. On the 3rd day, there came a man from Saul's camp, with his clothes torn and earth on his head. He approached me, fell to the ground, and prostrated himself. I said to him, "Where are you coming from?" "I escaped from the camp of Israel," he replied. "Tell me, please, how did things go?" I asked. "The people have fled the battle," he answered, "and many of them are wounded or dead. Saul and Jonathan, his son, are dead too." Holding back my emotions, I asked the young man, "How do you know that Saul, Jonathan, and his sons are dead?" The young man who had told me said, "I happened to be on Mount Gilboa when I saw Saul leaning on his spear. The chariots and cavalry were bearing down on him. He looked behind him, saw me, and called to me. I answered, 'Here I am.' He said to me, 'Who are you?' And I answered, 'I'm an Amaleki.' He said to me, 'I'm in agony, and I'm going to die, but I'm still alive. So please, stand next to me and kill me.' So I stood next to him and killed him, because I was sure he was so badly wounded that he couldn't live. I took the crown that was on his head and the bracelet on his arm and have brought them here to my lord." Then I took hold of my clothes and tore them, and likewise all the men who were with him. We wailed and cried, and we fasted until evening for Saul, for Jonathan his son, for Adonai's people, and for the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. After we grieved, I said to the young man who had told me, "Where are you from?" He answered, "I'm the son of a resident foreigner, an Amaleki." I asked him, "How is it that you weren't afraid to raise your hand to destroy Adonai's anointed?" As I said that, I waved Ovron of my young men and said, "Go over to him and kill him." He struck him down, and he died. I said to him, "Your blood is on your own head. Your own mouth convicted you when you said, 'I killed Adonai's anointed.' You have to understand, Adonai's appointed are holy. If you kill one of Adonai's appointed, it's like you're rebelling against Adonai himself. This I will not stand for." Then I pronounced this lament over Saul and over Jonathan his son, in order to teach the people of Judah not to underestimate archery. The lament has been written down in the book of Yashar. Your glory, Israel, lies dead on your high places. How the heroes have fallen. Don't speak of it in Gat. Don't proclaim it in the streets of Ashkelon. Then the daughters of the Pelishtim won't rejoice. The daughters of the uncircumcised won't gloat. Mountains of Gilboa, may there be on you no dew, no rain, no fields with good crops, because there the shields of the heroes were dishonored. The shield of Saul was no longer rubbed with oil. From the blood of the dead, from the flesh of heroes, the bow of Jonathan did not retreat, or the sword of Saul return unsatisfied. Saul and Jonathan, loved and gracious while alive, were not separated even in death. They were swifter than eagles, stronger than lions. Daughters of Israel, weep over Saul. He clothed you luxuriously in scarlet and put gold jewelry on your clothing. How the heroes have fallen in the heat of battle, Jonathan killed on your high places. I grieve for you, my brother Jonathan. You meant so much to me. Your love for me was deeper than the love of women. How the heroes have fallen, and the weapons of war perished. After saying this, I consulted Adonai and asked, "Should I go up into any of the cities of Judah?" Adonai said to me, "Go up." I asked, "Where should I go up?" He said, "To Hebron." So I went up there with my 2 wives and my men up with me, each with his household, and we lived in the cities of Hebron. Then the men of Judah came, and there they anointed me king over the house of Judah. They informed me that the men of Yavesh Gilad were the ones who had buried Saul. So I sent messengers to the men of Yavesh Gilad with this message: "May you be blessed by Adonai, because you showed this kindness to your lord, Saul, and buried him. Now may Adonai show kindness and truth to you, and I too will show you favor because you have done this. Be strong and be brave. Saul your lord is dead, but the house of Judah have anointed me king over them." Because some of the land was not fond of me becoming king over Judah, war broke out between my people and Saul's people. As the war progressed, my house and Saul's house, my house grew stronger, while the house of Saul became weaker. As the years went by, sons were born to me in Hebron. My firstborn was Amnon, whose mother was Achinoam from Yisrael. My second, Kilav, whose mother was Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel. The third, Avshalom, whose mother was Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. The fourth, Adoniah the son of Haggit. The fifth, Shaphatya the son of Avital. And the sixth, Yitream, whose mother was Eglah my wife. These were born to me in Hebron. As the war raged between my house and Saul's house, Avner sent envoys to me with this message: "Who is going to control the land? If you make yourself my ally, I will use my power to bring all Israel over to you." I sent this reply: "Very well, I will be your ally, on one condition. You will not come into my presence unless at the same time you bring with you Michal, Saul's daughter." I sent messengers to say to Ishbosheth the son of Saul, "Give me back my wife Michal. I betrothed her to myself for 100 foreskins of the Pelishtim." Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband Paltiel the son of Laish. I was told that her husband went with her, crying as he went, and followed her to Bachurim. But Avner told him, "Go back." He returned. Then Avner went to Hebron and reported to me everything that had been agreed to by Israel and the house of Benjamin, which was, "In the past, you wanted David to be king over you, so now do it. For Adonai has said of David, 'Through my servant David I will rescue my people Israel from the power of the Pelishtim and from the power of all their enemies.'" Avner also spoke with the people of Benjamin. Also, when Avner came to me in Hebron, he brought 20 men with him. I held a feast for Avner and his men. Avner said to me, "I must get up and go to gather all Israel to my lord the king, so that they can make a covenant with you. Then you will be able to rule over everything your heart desires." I sent Avner off, giving him safe conduct. Just then, my men and Yoav returned from a raid, bringing tons of plunder with them. But Avner was not with me in Hebron, because I had sent him off under safe conduct. When Yoav and all his army had arrived, Yoav was told, "Avner the son of Ner came to the king, but he sent him off, and he was left under safe conduct." Yoav went to me and said, "What have you done? Avner came to you, and you sent him away, and now he's gone. Why? You know Avner the son of Ner. He came only to deceive you, to learn what campaigns you're planning and to find out everything you're doing. After leaving me, Yoav sent messengers after Avner, and they brought him back from the water cistern at Sirah without my knowledge. Upon Avner's return to Hebron, Yoav took him aside into the space between the outer and inner city gates as if to speak with him privately, and there he struck him in the groin, so that he died, thus avenging the death of Asahel his brother. Afterwards, when I heard of it, I said, I and my kingdom are forever innocent of the death of Avner, the son of Ner. Let it fall on the head of Yoav and all his father's family. May Yoav's family always have someone with a hemorrhage, or tzaraat, or who has to walk with a cane, or who dies by the sword, or who lacks food. Thus Yoav and Avishai, his brother, killed Avner, because he had killed their brother Asahel during the battle in Givon. But I said to Yoav and all those with him, tear your clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourn over Avner. Days later I walked behind the body as it was carried. They buried Avner at Hebron. The king wept aloud at Avner's grave, and all the people wept. The king sang this lament over Avner. Should Avner have died like a thug? Your hands weren't tied, your feet weren't fettered. You fell like one who falls at the hands of criminals. Then all the people wept over him more than ever. All the people came to me and tried to make me eat some bread while it was still daytime. But I swore, may God bring terrible curses on me and worse ones yet if I taste bread or anything else until the sun goes down. All the people took note of this, and it pleased them. Whatever I did pleased all the people. So that day, all the people and all Israel understood that I had had no part in the killing of Avner the son of Ner. I said to my servants, you realize that a leader, a great man, has fallen today in Israel. Even though I have just been anointed king, I feel weak today, and these men, the sons of Zeruiah, are too brutal for me. May Adonai repay the criminal as his crime deserves. When Ishbosheth the son of Saul heard that Avner had died in Hebron, his courage failed, and all Israel became alarmed. Saul's son had two men who were captains of raiding parties, one called Baana and the other Rechab, sons of Rimmon the Beerothi, of the people of Benjamin. Before Jonathan died, he had a son, but he was lame in both legs. He had been 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Yisrael. His nurse had gathered him up and fled, but as she was hurrying to get away, he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. The sons of Rimmon the Beerothi, Rechab and Baana, went and arrived during the heat of the day at the home of Ishbosheth as he was taking his afternoon rest. They went right into the house as if they were coming to get wheat and stabbed him in the groin. Then Rechab and Baana, his brother, escaped. They entered the house as he lay on his bed in his bedroom, stabbed him and killed him. Then they beheaded him, took his head and fled all night along the road through the Arava. They brought the head of Ishbosheth to me in Hebron and said to me, here is the head of Ishbosheth the son of Saul your enemy, who wanted to take your life. Today Adonai has taken revenge on Saul and his son, for the sake of my lord the king. But I answered Rechab and Baana, his brother, as Adonai lives, who has rescued me from every kind of difficulty. But when someone told me, here, Saul is dead, thinking to myself that he was bringing good news, I didn't reward him for his news, but seized him and killed him in Ziklag. How much more, when criminals have killed an innocent man in his own house on his own bed? Shouldn't I hold you responsible for his death and rid the earth of you? I then gave an order to my men, and they put them to death, cut off their heads and feet, and hung them up next to the pool at Hebron. Then we took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in Avner's grave at Hebron. After the war, all the tribes of Israel came to me in Hebron and said, here, we are your own flesh and bone. In the past, when Saul was king over us, it was you who led Israel's military campaigns. And Adonai said to you, you will shepherd my people Israel, and you will be chief over Israel. So all the leaders of Israel came to the king in Hebron, and I, King David, made a covenant with them in Hebron in the presence of Adonai. At the age of 30, after 15 years of fear, terror, war, trial and tribulation, and most importantly, believing in Adonai our God, I have become king over all of Israel. Always remember, God loves and is on your side, no matter what happens. If you want to grow closer to God like me, make sure to subscribe. God bless you.